It's Friday, March 28th.
The President of the United States reached out to schedule a call. We'll be speaking soon.
High-stakes call. Prime Minister Mark Carney and U.S. President Donald Trump are expected to have a conversation soon as Canada gets ready for the next phase of the trade war.
These are our jobs. These are our plants. These are our communities. And this is our country. And we are fighting for all of it.
Standing tall, Labour leaders in Canada's auto industry speaking out defiantly against Trump's tariffs that are coming next week.
We're loading up with salt because if we are going to have a prolonged freezing rain event, we want to make sure we have enough materials to deal with that.
Preparing for the worst, a nasty spring snowstorm in the prairies is bringing freezing rain to large parts of Ontario and southwestern Quebec this weekend. People in Atlantic Canada should also brace themselves.
Sent behind the net, Crosby in front, he scores!
Mr. Consistency, Canadian hero Sidney Crosby setting a new record for points per game. He's now scored at least a point per game in each of his 20 seasons. Stay with us, Canada. Your morning starts right now. Good morning, Canada. Welcome to Your Morning. I'm Anne-Marie Mediwake.
Good morning. I'm Lindsey Deluce.
I'm Kelsey McEwen. Hope your day's off to a great start.
I know. You looked at my face. I was like, 20 seasons, because I remember being a reporter in Halifax, which for me is not that long ago. And we were doing stories like trying to talk to his neighbors, like, like Sid the Kid.
Yes,
This was a great local story about how amazing. And it's just, it blows my mind. I don't know. As I get older, I'm just like, time, what is time?
I know.
Yeah,
and the fact, like,
what is
Sid
happening?
the Kid doesn't work anymore because he's like Sid the Man.
Yeah, the man child. Anyway, really exciting, though. Another record broken, so we'll talk about that coming up. In the meantime, Prime Minister Mark Carney will speak with the premiers today on tariffs and U.S. relations. That relationship, by the way, Mark Carney says, has fundamentally changed.
The old relationship we had with the United States, based on deepening integration of our economies and tight security and military cooperation, is over.
Speaking after an emergency cabinet meeting in Ottawa, Prime Minister Carney says President Trump has reached out, and he does expect to speak with him soon. President Trump this week, as we know, signed off on that 25% auto tariff. He then followed up with another threat to raise tariffs on Canada and Europe. Canada has already hit the U.S. with retaliatory tariffs. Ottawa will wait until U.S. reciprocal tariffs are in place next week before making its next move.
He's reassuring us that there'll be no plant closures. My response was Ronald Reagan's response, trust but verify.
Ontario Premier Doug Ford says he has spoken to U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. The Premier was given some details about how the U.S. auto tariff will work. So this is what he was told. Vehicles made up of at least 50% U.S. parts might be exempt from tariffs entirely. Premier Ford is planning to speak with the Canadian CEOs of major automakers on Monday. People working in the business say the North American auto industry is too interconnected to withstand the U.S. president's 25% tariffs.
The profit margins for everybody in this business is 6 or 7%. So, we could be talking about 12 or 25 or 50 or 1,000. The effect is going to be the same. It's going to grind the industry to a halt on both sides of the border within about a week or so of its implementation.
Unifor held a rally Thursday for 3,000 workers at the GM plant in Oshawa, handing out elbows up T-shirts and vowing to fight back. Now, the union is also calling on the government to punish companies that shift production from Canada to south of the border. Meanwhile, Honda says it's working to protect operations at its plant in Alliston, Ontario. To health news now. Public Health Ontario says there are now 572 confirmed and suspected cases of measles in the province. The majority of the cases are linked to a single person, one infected person who arrived from New Brunswick last October. More than 100 measles cases have been added to Ontario's count since last week. 42 measles patients have ended up in the hospital. 41 of those people were not immunized, and most of those patients have been children. A Jays fan showing his Canadian pride was thrown out of yesterday's home opener because of his hat.
Just before game time, the usher approached me and She was very polite. She actually apologized, but she said, my hat's making a political statement, and they don't allow political statements.
So that's Dan Begley. He was escorted out of the stadium by security after refusing to take off that hat. It says Canada is not for sale. It's the same hat, remember, Ontario Premier Doug Ford wore during his first ministers' meeting earlier this year. The Jays have since apologized to Begley, saying their staff, quote, made a mistake. Begley has accepted an invite back to the ballpark. Oh, speaking of political statements at the game.
For the land of the free.
So I'm just playing that for you because Jays fans were booing the Star-Spangled Banner, even though a message beforehand asked people to be respectful. We've seen this at many other professional games as well. There were plenty of cheers, though, as the crowd then joined in to sing "O Canada." That's the cast from The Lion King performing both anthems, by the way. Tough start, though. Should we talk about the actual game? The 2025 season for the Blue Jays.
After about the fifth inning, I just didn't want to be there. But, I mean, it's great to be back at Rogers Center. Baseball's back, which is fun. But I really hope it's not like last year.
Yeah, it sure felt like last year, though. Jays lost this one 12-2. 12-2. Luckily, there are 161 games left. Another reason for optimism, the team and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. are still reportedly working on a contract extension. This despite the fact at the start of spring training, he had said he intended to walk to free agency at the end of the season. The Jays host the Orioles again tonight for Game 2 of a 7-game homestand, so there's that. Sidney Crosby has hit another career milestone.
Sent behind the net, Crosby in front, he scores! Crosby, the most consistent of them all.
Alexander Ovechkin isn't the only generational star chasing down Wayne Gretzky's records. Crosby's first period goal Thursday night was his 80th point this season. So what does that do? Well, that assures he will finish his 20th NHL season averaging at least a point per game. Gretzky only managed that 19 times. Crosby played his 72nd game of the year last night. He's already missed 2 games due to injury, so calculations. That means no matter what, he'll have averaged at least a point per game this year. Very awesome. So it may be spring, but it's not going to seem like it across much of the country this weekend.
It's one storm bringing notable freezing rain and then another storm on its heels bringing additional hours of freezing rain.
2 rounds of widespread freezing rain are expected in much of Ontario as well as parts of southwestern Quebec. There are already freezing rain warnings in Ontario. I'm going to bring in Kelsey on this one, too. Special weather statements for Quebec. This is going to be, and it's not just like a single event. It's happening over the course of a couple days, right?
Yeah, because there's 2 different things happening here. We've had massive amounts of snow within the prairies, anywhere between 15 to 30 centimeters from Jasper basically through Winnipeg. Wow. So that band is now moving eastward. And now the warnings extend east of Superior, east of Georgian Bay. It's not only snow, it's also freezing rain once it hits Ontario. And then there's a second round of moisture coming up from the States. So 2 different things. One's almost like northwest to southeast, and then the other is southwest to northeast. So they crisscross each other, and it brings with it a lot of precipitation. So Kenora is seeing that snowfall now. This view courtesy of FSET. The snow is actively falling within the area. Remember, this is going to be a spring snow, so it's very heavy and wet in a lot of cases. Some of that melts on contact. So with temperatures being as they are, that melting then turns to ice, and it just is mucky outside. So this is a multi-day event. For areas farther west, you are going to clear through today. The snow will end in Alberta this morning. It'll end through the day in Saskatchewan, by tonight in southern Manitoba, and tonight in northwest Ontario.